And Stefan goes for a really big raise here, 5.5x. And this is a classic Stefan play. Right here, we've got our first hand. It looks like Stefan is raising under the gun because only Stefan would use this sizing. I don't even have to see his name. Yeah, it is Stefan. I was right. So, why is he using such a large sizing, you would ask, right? Most people go like 200 here, maybe 250. Why is he using such a large sizing? So he must be adjusting to one of the players, and he must be thinking, hey, these guys play way too many hands, and they don't really care if I make it 100 more or less. They're just going to call me anyway. So I'm going to make the pot nice and large, which under the right circumstances is a cool idea. So Isik defends in the big blind, and when he defends versus such a large sizing versus under the gun, he's going to have a pretty strong range. I mean, he's getting very bad odds, and, you know, he's not going to have amazing equity versus a tight opening range. Stefan goes for a small bet on a very dry board, which is kind of good for him, right? I mean, he's going to have sevens and a queen a lot, and pairs, and, you know, good backdoor hands. So it makes sense to c-bet here. And Isik calls, which can be fine, can be terrible, depending on the hand. 5 doesn't change a whole lot other than exactly pocket 5s. I guess queen 5 suited, well, no, that's actually not relevant. I mean, queen 5 suited is already blocked by the board. So Stefan actually goes for a 2x pot bet almost, which is kind of unorthodox. So at this point, he's saying, I've got at least a queen. It's very difficult to value bet a hand like 10s here and expect to get called. But Isik calls again. River's an ace, which changes things a little bit again. Stefan definitely is not going to bet hands like aces on the turn for this sizing, but he may have a hand like ace-queen, which now improved to a full house. So I'm expecting Stefan to go for a very big bet here, and in fact, he shoves all in. So he's really saying, hey, I've got ace-queen, 5s, 7s, maybe he's got a hand like king-queen, and he just thinks it's good always. Very interesting line. Wow. Sick. Okay, so Stefan raised under the gun with 5s. Obviously, he would raise this hand. It's easily good enough. Well, it's actually a little bit closer than you would think. You know, some of these low pairs are overvalued, but pocket 5s is not the lowest pair. And on the flop, easy value bet for, you know, easy value bet. You need a lot of protection. So, and on the turn in the river, I mean, he just milked this guy to the max. He must have thought, wow, I think this guy is a queen, and I think he's not going to fold. And Isiko has queen 8 offsuit. In theory, you probably cannot fold to this aggressive line, but then again, I mean, it is a really aggressive line. Queen 8 off, I probably would just fold pre-flop. I mean, yeah, your hand is somewhat connected, but not that connected. You're also not suited, so yeah, I would fold pre-flop. I'll give Stefan an 8.5 out of 10. I'll give Isik a 7.5 out of 10. I don't like the pre-flop defend, but I don't mind check calling sometimes with trips on the flop. That's a cool play. And on the turn, he obviously cannot fold with trips. And on the river, well, he must have thought, well, ace queen is now less likely. I can still beat some random bluffs. I'm gonna call. So it's a little bit of a loose call. You know, you can even find a fold with a queen here sometimes, but I cannot really blame him for calling against a loose aggressive player. So yeah, very fun hand to start with, and you know, definitely not unexpected coming from Stefan, who is a very creative player. But that's a good thing, right? Being creative is a good thing sometimes. So we've got another 50-100 hands. It's 5-handed. And this time, Stefan goes for a more normal 2.5x open raise. And Yasamgel goes for a regular 11x 3-bet. 11 big blind 3-bet. I hope he doesn't go 11x. That would be over the top. Stefan calls, which he's going to do with a somewhat wide range. I mean, he still has a lot of playability left in position. Yasamgel goes for a third pot bet on the queen 7-4. You could size up if you wanted to. You know, you can bet full range. You can mix it up. I have no idea what Sam's doing, but it's a pretty solid board for him. You know, Sam's going to have 7s here for sure. He's going to have queens for sure, kings, aces, good queen X. Hands like jacks are looking good, or at least pretty good. So he can see about this board quite liberally. The ace is a good card for both of them, depending on how they play their range. So if Yassam Gale were to bet his full range, well, then he's going to hit this ace every single time, right? Every single time he c-bets an ace, he's going to hit it. But if he mixes it up and checks a lot of hands like ace-king on the flop, then obviously this card is not so good for him. Stefan is also going to hit this ace a lot. You know, he can have ace-queen, ace-7, ace-4, random floats like ace-jack. So pretty good card for both. If anything, it's obviously a better card for Sam. So Sam is going to do a decent amount of betting here, but not this time. And Stefan is going to mostly check behind here. If he bets, he's going to bet quite a polarized range. So when he bets, as you see, he sizes up a little bit. He clearly is saying, hey, I'm quite polarized. I'm betting at least a hand like, you know, ace-10, ace-jack plus, but perhaps even a stronger one. 4 doesn't change a whole lot. I mean, I guess Stefan could have been bluffing with a hand like 4-5 or something like that. I guess ace-4 now makes a full house. But other than that, the 4 doesn't matter too much. So it makes sense for Stefan to be shoving here if he has any bets. Wow. That's a sick cooler. That is a sick cooler. So Sam 3-bets ace-4 suited. Definitely standard. You know, your hand is very good when it comes to playability. I mean, you're suited, you're connected, you have an ace-high suit, in fact. The fact that you have an ace means that your opponent is not going to 4-bet you as much or call you as much. And Sam actually used a tricky post-flop line. He bet the flop, which I like, and then actually check-called the turn. You know, so he was hoping that Stefan might turn something like 5-6 or a flush draw or a gut shot into a bluff. And he actually check-called down. So, yeah, I really like his creativity here. You could even check-raise all in if you wanted to, but I think it's a really cool play. So I'll give Sam a 9.5 out of 10. As for Stefan, I don't mind the play. I mean, he called pre-flop with 7s. He called the flop. You know, if you have a raising range on the flop, 7s could definitely be included into that raising range. But you don't always want to raise, if at all. And then on the turn, he's thinking, well, this card is not the greatest card ever, but I still want to have some bets. And, you know, might as well bet middle set, right? So, and on the river, obviously, easy shove. So I'll give Stefan I'll give him a 10 because he's done everything right. But the thing is, he called a set in position and then, you know, barreled off with basically the nuts. So there's really not much to say. He played his hand well, but in terms of difficulty, it was like a 2 out of 10. But yeah, very fun hand. Good hand to both guys. The small blind limps here, which makes a lot of sense at higher stakes. You're not paying a lot of rake. And obviously, you're getting a good price. You're putting in 50 into a pot that's going to be 200. And Stefan goes for a really big raise here, 5.5x. And this is a classic Stefan play. You know, most guys just say, hey, I raised 3x, 3.5x. That's just my sizing. Stefan's the type of guy to use multiple raise sizes, which, you know, obviously is much more difficult to execute. It's much more complicated. But at the same time, it can really confuse your opponent. So against this bigger sizing, Isik is going to be a lot tighter, so he can do a lot more folding, but not this time. And Stefan goes for a pretty large bet. He's thinking, well, I mean, is my opponent really calling a hand like, you know, 6-3 suited against a 5.5x open raise? Maybe 8-6, but that's about it, right? Maybe low pair, but this board is not that scary. And so he goes for the big bet. Isik calls him. Now, this 6 is a very relevant card. I mean, Isik can definitely have a hand like, you know, 8-5 suited or 8-7 suited or even a hand like ace-8. So, surprising that Stefan still bets so large. And unsurprisingly, Isik doesn't fold. Board pairs, which is also relevant. I mean, Stefan can definitely have a full house here. I mean, you might expect him to sometimes like bet smaller on the turn, but he can definitely have a full house. And now he bets 9,900, you know, the ultimate level, like, you know, trying to give him a discount, not quite 10K, but making it 9,900. So, you know, a lot of guys do this because they want you to call because 9,900 sounds a lot less scary than 10K. But then some guys know that and they bet 9,900 as a bluff on purpose because they, you know, they might think their opponent will fold because it looks like they're trying to get value out of them. So it's a nice leveling game. Okay, so Stefan has pocket fives. I mean, I definitely like his line, as in definitely isolate, definitely bet flop, Turn, you could check behind, but I don't mind the bet. And obviously betting river, the sizes are very unorthodox once again, right? So he must think, so maybe this is just part of his, supposed GTO strategy, or maybe he thinks the small blind is just not going to fold. He's seen the small blind make very loose calls before, and he thinks, I'm just going to milk this guy. So I'll give Stefan an 8.5 out of 10. I like his funky play for sure. It's always a good time when you have Stefan at the table. I would say he's probably my most common opponent. I play Zaz 91 a little bit, but, Denver, Live Together, JVL, I don't really play them much. I never really have, but I play Stefan all the time. So he's a fun guy. Four-handed game here is going to be a very tough game. So Yomiko with the, I don't know who that is, but it looks like a Pirates of the Caribbean character, even though it's not. Folds, Poker Clucker folds as well. And now we see Stefan raise 2.5x in the small one, all right? This guy is just very entertaining. Okay, so Stefan min bets the flop. Very interesting. It's a clever play, but it's a very tricky one. So this board is obviously not very good for Stefan, right? Let's all agree on that. Yes, he's gonna have some good stuff like sets and a couple, 8-6 suited, whatnot. But Muniz is gonna have those hands as well, and he's gonna have a lot of pairs plus straight draws and gut shots and overcards. Muniz is doing very well here. So Stefan knows, hey, I can't just bet full range. So he's saying, well, if I bet really, really small, I allow myself to do more betting, right? If I got raised, the pot's going to be smaller. If I bet so small, he's going to have to call me with weaker hands. So it's a very clever adjustment to, still get to bet some weaker hands or some medium strength hands. And Muniz is going to raise here quite aggressively. He's going to have 5, 7s, maybe 9s, 9, 7, 7, 5, 9, 5. He's going to have high equity draws, as I said. He's going to have hands like a good 9. He's doing quite well here. So he goes for the high frequency raise, I assume, and Stefan calls. 10 definitely changes things. I mean, Muniz could have easily raised a hand like, 10-8, and now he has a pair. And, a hand like Jack 10, or even a hand like Jack 8, which now makes it straight. So Muniz is going to be quite aggressive here. And, he's still going to have hands like 8-6 and all the other stuff. So he goes for the full pot bet, saying, I've got a pretty strong hand here. River's a king. Muniz could even have a hand like Queen Jack. It's a reasonable hand to bluff raise on the flop, and then on the turn, while you have an open ender, 2 overs. So yeah, Muniz can still have those 2 pairs, straights, sets, the new straight. So I would imagine either he bets something like 3K here, or maybe even goes all in. He can shove all in quite aggressively here. And Muniz shoves. I mean, that's definitely a good sizing. You definitely need to include that hand. So, wow, nice one. Okay, so Stefan has pocket 7s, which is, I guess it's reasonable. If he wants to bet something on the flop, this is definitely a good hand to bet with. He needs a decent amount of protection with 7s, but he's got a very good hand. And I think on a blank run out, when some straight draws miss, when the flush draw misses, I don't think he should be folding here. I mean, Muniz could even fast play a hand like pocket 5s like this. So I'll give Stefan an 8.5 out of 10. 8.5 out of 10 here. It's a pretty clever play. It's very difficult, but it's very clever. And Muniz, I mean, the pre-flop defend is standard. The flop defend is fine, right? You block 8-6. You've got an open ender. You've got a flush draw. And he's thinking, well, I block 8-6. I have 6 high. I'm going to bluff it through. So I'll give him an 8.5 out of 10 as well. Can't really blame him for shoving with 6 high in a spot where he's got a lot of value bets. I mean, 8-6, Jack 8, Queen Jack, sets. He's got a lot of good stuff. So, yeah, cool play. I mean, as you see, again, Stefan goes for this very funky play, but he wins a lot of hands, right? I mean, he's a good player. He clearly makes his style work. It is not a style I recommend for most of my students or most of you guys listening, because it's very difficult to implement. So it's very high risk, very high reward.